Welcome back, colleagues. So can I ask that we start with the DPCI's matters, and this is why it's important that we do that. If the investigative issues are a serious impediment, there is no point getting to the prosecution's bit without understanding what the problems are at that level. So my suggestion is that we deal with DPCI, we interrogate as many of the issues around the data that they've presented and the issues that arise. And then we move on to the NPA. So nobody's getting off the hook. But I do want us to interrogate the issues properly. One of the concerns I have, for instance, is the process of deciding which case becomes a priority. Because if your capacity is 50%, it follows that each detective probably has twice, each investigator probably has twice the cases that they should be handling, or whatever the measure may be. So that's a real material issue, for instance. So the process of getting there, I also, for instance, need to understand when you say you're operating at 50 point something odd percent, what type of capacity is missing? So can you just take us through what you would consider to be critical to investigations? What is missing? The impact thereof, and so on, right? And for all of you, one of the questions I were to ask, for instance, and we can have the discussion, I mean, what's your budget allocation now? In an ideal world, how much should it be? Because it identifies a shortfall, right? Otherwise, we're going to have a discussion that's all over the place and we end up nowhere. So, members, can I ask that we do that? So let's start with the DPCI, and then we deal with the NPA, because the referrals from the SIU are what they are. They are already there. So let's start at the investigations phase. Honorable Atkinson, sorry. Yes, no, but I do want to ask these foundational questions. So it might be secretaries that are missing, not investigators. For instance, I do want to know, when you say 49% vacancy rate, what are we talking here? How many of these are investigators? How many of these are forensic accountants? How many of these are whatever the case might be? So that we know what we're talking about. We don't talk in generalities.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and the Honorable Members. Maybe just to quickly break down the figures, Honorable Chair. The current figures that we have, that includes the support staff, not just the operational officials only. We are at 2688. And then the shortfall that we have is 2644. And the two figures, if you combine them, they give you the 5332. Now, in this financial year, that is 25-26, this financial year, the police management and ourselves have agreed that we are going to prioritize 500 posts. These 500 posts, we are going to divide them into two. 300 will be the posts that we advertise internally. That will be for the posts, the kind of posts that we can find, that we can source internally within the police. That will be the investigators mostly. But then the 200, we have reserved it for external advertisement. Now, the external advertisement will talk to those posts that we do not have the capacity internally, like your forensic accountants. We are also in the process of capacitating the cyber crime, the cyber security environment, and we think that if we can enhance our capacity within the cyber space, cyber crime space, and we enhance the forensic accountants, because most, maybe when I explained earlier, Chairperson, I mentioned that one of the things that delays our investigation is the outsourcing towards the forensic accounting, but also my colleagues from the SIU mentioned the digital world, because a lot of our things are now, or crime now is in the cyber crime space. So we, with the 200, will focus on the skills that we don't have internally, your forensic and the colleagues in the IT environment. And then the question that the chairperson asked, where our critical shortage is. Our problem is not necessarily within our support space, because even if there is, we can survive with those. Through natural attrition and some of our colleagues poaching, in that we tend to fish in the same pond, and we take from each other. But the critical aspect for us is on the operational environments. The investigators, particularly those with a specific skill that is required. Yeah, when I joined the DPCI chairperson, I was coming from a murder and robbery environment. I didn't think that investigating murder could be shorter and quicker than the cases that I find in the serious commercial crime space, where you walk into one place and you find the whole office is just full of one docket with the different files there. So the complexity is so vast that when we lose those, even if we do get replacement, it takes us time to bring him to a level where we can be comfortable that he can build a case that the NPA will find suitable to take to court. But those are the figures that we have, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me ask thank you for that for that answer. Let me ask the question in this way. My impression is that the days of the police or the hawks rocking up with bakkies and removing big files are gone. I haven't printed more than 50 pages in the last 6 months, right? Okay. How are you doing on your skills level of your current crop of investigators versus that technology environment? Have you made an assessment of that reality? Because we, as you said, we're dealing with the digital environment and so on. And yeah. So how are you doing on that? The skills, have you made an assessment of the skills level of your investigators of commercial crimes in general?
Thank you, Chairperson. Indeed, we have. But what we realized, that, Honorable Chairperson, was that it might take us longer to try and convert your traditional investigator into a competent person in the cyberspace. Hence, we created a support environment that supports him irrespective of his skill level. Hence, the cyber capacity that I spoke of, the forensic accounting that I spoke of, are people that support that not very skilled individual, but they themselves are not the one that are investigating, but they create a capacity for him. So meaning that if he has your device, he might not know how to access those items there. But when we send him to the to your office to pick those up, we'll send him with an expert who will make sure that it's handled correctly, the evidence in a correct way, and then he analyzes it and then gives him a report that he will then file to take to the NPA. Thank you, sir.
No, thanks. I understand how you're mitigating the issue. But what I need to get as a general impression is whether, maybe given the age and the training that your investigators have received, whether they are up to speed. Forget the vacancies, because we're still coming to that. Are these people who are au fait with the technological environment in which we live? Because even calling on the capacity to assist you, you need to understand the implication of what you're looking at. And I see even here in committee where people don't understand the implication of the very thing that they are looking at themselves. So that's why I'm asking the question, because we can get to the fundamental issue. And it's not a criticism. Not a criticism. The teaching profession is dealing with the same. And I can go on. So I just want to get an understanding. Do people need training, or you feel that you actually just need to get as many new people as you can into the system who are able to work with these instruments?
Thanks again, Honorable Chair. There's room for improvement. Definitely, we could do better with the training. But what we have tried to and mitigate in another aspect, Honorable Chairperson, is that the new ones that we are recruiting, we have agreed with the management of the SAPS that if they give us a new recruit that has just been released from college, they will give us those that have specific qualifications, whether it's law, whether it is IT, and whether it's accounting, because those are the critical ones that we need. To answer directly the question of how's our skill set if you were to remove the support environment that we have, there will be room for improvement that will be needed in that space. And although we do have a few individuals who will be equal to that challenge, but you might not have the two in one place, residing in one space. The capacity to investigate and the skill set, whether it's the forensic accounting or whether it is the cybercrime investigation. So hence I've then said to the Honorable Chair, it is therefore that is why we are prioritizing the capacitation of those environments. There is hope that with the infusion of the new people that are joining the DPCI, as I've just said, that we've already agreed with our HR at head office that those that will be sent to our space will be those that possess that specific skill that we're just going to train them to investigate. Thank you, Chair.
Now, this is my last question. Then I'm going to hand over to the members, and I will give my impression, and you tell me if I am incorrect. I think that someone with a BCom law would be extremely useful to your capacity, because they're not just looking at the transaction as an accounting entry. They're also able to look at it relative to what legislation allows or does not allow. They can look at reporting, they can look at statement of assets, and so on in an income statement, and see that something doesn't make sense here because this is not supposed to be classified here, it's supposed to be classified over there, right? A direct question. Are you able? Well, two questions. One, in your current ranks of investigators, what is the proportion of people with that level of skill and education? And the degree is one thing. Then you need to go and work somewhere, either for a law firm or for Deloitte or whatever the case is. So one, how are you doing on that capacity? Because I think that is that is important. The second thing is, in terms of your current salary resourcing, are you able to hire those people? Let's say somebody with a BCom law and honors 5 to 7 years working experience, let's say in a particular environment, are you able to hire those people?
Thank you, Chair. We, as I explained earlier, we are in the process of initiating this forensic accounting. So we do have chartered accountants. I think we've got 2. And then those that are a level lower than chartered accountants, just that I didn't get the records with me, but in that space, I think we've got 16. And as you might see, Honorable Chair, the numbers are quite low. Because if I'm talking, I think as of now, we are around 16 in that space of forensic accountants. So the number is low. And are we able to attract the required numbers? When we advertise the post, not a lot applies, as my colleague here has said from the NPA. And not only that, even those that we have, sometimes they leave within a year or 2 after being there. But I don't think it's a hopeless situation, though, because as I speak to you now, we do have 2 chartered accountants in the office, and they've been with us now for, I think, 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years. So they've been with us, and they came with a reasonable experience. And I agree with you 100%, Chairperson, that a person with a qualification such as the one that you've mentioned adds value, and will see things different than an ordinary investigator that would be there. Hence, we agreed that going forward, we will only bring in capacity. It might not always come with the experience of workplace experience or exposure to the workplace, but at least we will bring in someone with the qualifications on which to polish would be easier. To mitigate this, Chairperson, we have entered into an agreement with the private sector so that these people that we have with at least qualification but not have workplace experience, they work together so that they share experiences so that they can wrap off the skill set to these new ones. And we do have a program that is run from the presidency, this joint initiative, where in this financial year, we have put in place between ourselves as the police and the private sector, 75 million each, which gives us 150 million. From this 150 million, we are going to use it to fast track these investigations that are moving very slowly. So the assistance will not be only from my 16 forensic accountants that I spoke of, but we've got from the business, they've identified forensic companies that will assist us. So I'm trying to say this, Chairperson, that there are initiatives in place that will at least address your concern about the pace that we are moving at. Thank you.
No, thank you. And please don't view this as an attack. My concerns are not addressed, and it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you. So, for instance, when you say you've got 2 CAs, right, I need to get a sense of 2 CAs where? In the entire... Jesus. I'm sorry to say, it can't be, because also CAs are different. Others specialize in auditing, others specialize in cost accounting, others specialize in management, finance, and so on, right? 2, I am sorry, is not going to cut it. And I'm raising this because it then goes to the heart of whether we're able to complete the investigations in any reasonable amount of time. It genuinely does. I am not blaming you, right? But we need to call a spade here. What is clear, because what my feeling, and you will correct me if I'm wrong, is that the training that most of your investigators have is for pickpockets and murderers. Those investigators are expected to investigate financial crimes. And basically we're sending people to a gunfight carrying a knife. That's the picture that emerges for me. And we are going to come to the prosecutors, but the reason I am interrogating this at this stage is that if there is very little prospect of a complete docket getting to a prosecutor, we are wasting time as a country, basically. So that's the sense I wanted to get. And please, again, I am not attacking you. 2 CAs is not. And let me just say, and this is a comment, this is a fundamental problem with doing away with the DSO. And this is what has occurred, because the DSO could hire people from auditing firms, from banks and this kind of thing. That capacity was taken away by law. It has never been restored, either in terms of the financial support that is required, because then you can't hire the people. Right? It's a comment that I'm making, but it's clear to me that unless we are able to hire people with the kind of qualifications so that you are sufficiently capacitated. Because my next question is going to be, of your top management structure in the DPCI, does anybody have accounting as a qualification? I'm asking seriously, do you know?
Yes, we do. We have 2 senior managers. This is a chartered accountants that I spoke to. They are both in senior management.
So, but you see, so in Gauteng, for instance, you probably need 30, 40.
Indeed.
Given the size of the economy, the number of companies and so on, right? Just in Gauteng alone. So if we have 2 nationally, we have a problem. Clearly, right? And we will wait forever for people to get arrested, and they never do. Because of, anyway, so let me give the members an opportunity, but anyway, I felt that was important to establish, because I think we all playing it. Let me go with in sequence, right, so that we'll start here this time. Honorable Mende, Honorable Matiwa, and I don't know if you want a second bite, and Honorable Esak. So let's do that, and then we'll take in threes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning once more to everyone. Ntombuvi Yomente, member of SCOPA, deployed by the EFF. No, the first question is also in relation to what the Chair was seeking to get a clarification on, especially in terms of capacity. I'm going to point you to 2 reports you have given to SCOPA. 2023 report, it was obviously General Lebeya. 2024 report, now your report today. Now, in the 2024 report, we've got, in terms of the accounting of cases, we've got 18 cases where the National Prosecuting Authority declined to prosecute. And then this one, you have 15, which I think cumulatively, they come from the previous report, some of them. And for me, that's very problematic for the NPA to be telling a specialized unit that there's no grounds to prosecute here. So this talks to exactly what the chairperson was pointing out. That what kind of a capacity refers a case that they are not comfortable and satisfied with, that it can lead to successful prosecution. But yet, yes, it's sent to NPA for decision, even though it doesn't tick all the boxes, with the hope that for some reason it will be conveyor belted to the court roll, and then a judge or a magistrate says, but this is a nonsensical case you brought here. Then it comes back to prosecutors that they fail. Now, at what point do we send such cases? I know you will justify in terms of each case, what were the reasons of there are no grounds to prosecute. There will not be any successful prosecution in each of those cases. The question is, at what point do we send a docket to NPA for prosecution where it does not tick all the boxes? Who monitors such a process and okays it to go through? I'll also tell you why I am worried and fixated on this particular item, is that in South Africa, since the dawn of democracy, we are now on austerity measures. You know, the biggest gap in South Africa is corruption. Money flows through corruption. And you know the worst pain? No one gets arrested. So our hope is that once the SIU says, gets a proclamation, we then have a hope, and then they come here to say, we see something, we can hold on to something here. Then they refer a docket to you, and you send it to NPA. Before we hammer the NPA, it comes back to say there are no grounds. So what is the process that you undertake once the NPA says there's no grounds? Yet the SIU is saying, take this case, there's something here. Money has vanished. We can point to people who have stolen it. We can point to items that have been purchased with it. We can point to accounts that indicate a crime where money was flowing from this account to the next account. So do your part. The second one, Chair, is the cases that are under investigation. Yes, I get the capacity in terms of investigators. You know, Chair, over and above the DPCI not having enough capacity in terms of general investigators, the progression in the SAPS is rather also unfortunate. So that is why the DPCI will not have an extraordinary eye to also poach from the detectives at a police level, police station level in terms of commercial crimes. Because I think it's the issue of regulations where everyone is at a lowest rank, not easily picked up, not easily shine, to a point where such units can start taking very progressive detectives from police station level to push new recruits in so that they can go and close the space. However, we have universities which I believe produce the prerequisite skills now. And the question becomes, what's your relationship with universities in order for you to capture those that have that skill from the level of universities to such an extent of maybe some of the colleges that may produce some of the required skills on your unit. Then the last one will be, there's this one case which is, it was in your last report and it's still in your report now. It was finalized, but the person was found not guilty. I'm interested to know what was this case and why was the person not found guilty. It doesn't have amounts attached to it, but the fact that it went through from SIU to yourself to NPA, went in front of the magistrate or maybe a judge, but the person was found not guilty. It's related to what my colleague was asking. The judge will then say the NPA botched the case, but it went all the way through, gone there as a certified case that there's something to answer. Yet a person walked or people walked. Well, I would like to know what was that case about. Thank you.
Thank you, Slad. Andizubamte bulise kuwe, bulise ku advocates, SIU, national head, NPA, no general or lieutenant generals, Hawks, and Miss Alfumani Tubalo bulise kaleng. No, mhlekazi wami, into endifuna uyiqonda mna on the operational challenges that are linked to the high vacancy rate within the Hawks. If we can be provided with the statistics on the cases per investigator, the success rate, and other operational things that are affecting the work of the Hawks, I think that would be of assistance to us. Because we came to look at the briefing was not on operational issues, but we find that now that the issues might be operational that are affecting the work of the Hawks. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Matwan. In fact, added to that is just the length of time each docket takes to complete. Linked to it. So thanks for that question. It's very pertinent. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Chair, I'm going to be very brief, quick one. I just, as a matter of concern, and I need to understand this correctly, in the earlier presentation this morning, I got the impression that there seems to be somewhat of an obscured line of instruction between the NPA and the DPCI. And I just wanted to get clarity in terms of why is there this obscurity in terms of instruction, if you can comprehend where I'm coming from, okay? I'm sure you would. And then, of course, I think it was just raised now, again, looking at the notes, some 96 dockets, obviously, that seem to be pending decision at the NPA that are outstanding. Now, I just wanted to understand again, the timeline around that. I realize your explanations earlier, etc., but somewhere along the line, Chair, through you, I would, ask that we try and bring some finality and some conclusion to these issues instead of sitting back here in 6 months' time and say, well, we're down to 86 from 96. So I just wanted to get some clarity on that one. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I think from my side, there was a question that I had asked. What is the guideline for choosing which case is going to get prioritized? Because I had asked that. Thanks. Can we then deal with the questions from the honorable members, and then we'll take more members afterwards.
Thank you, honorable Chair and members. Maybe let me start with the last one about the figures, because I can see that it could mislead. The difficult aspect about cases that we take for decision to the NPA is that three types of actions sometimes come out of it. The first one is that the case docket might come back with further investigation that they have identified as requiring additional investigation. The second thing is that they might decide to prosecute on it. And obviously the third one is that they might decline not to prosecute. But the problem with the figures is that it's a living type of number that constantly change, because that 96 would have been as it was when we compiled the presentation. It might have been that 20 of those have already come back yesterday or today, and 20 others or 10 others have gone back. So it is difficult if we come back and we say 86 is now the figure. It might not necessarily mean it's that 86 from that original 96, because that numbers that we take for decision is constantly a changing numbers. I send to her, she brings back, we bring new ones. So that figure is a bit difficult to follow. But then my colleague will answer the question from the honorable members. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask before you move on? There still has to be a sense of progress, right?
Yes.
In the net result. So I understand that what had been referred back might then get sent up again and is prosecutable. But it's got to be possible to track that. Otherwise, then it means we will never know, right? And if you're not currently tracking that, basically compiling the information in that way, I'd like you to, for next time, please do that, right? Because it just assists us to know whether there has been progress or not, because also new matters get enrolled and then they get, you know what I mean? Then it means sitting here, we actually just don't know whether those specific matters that had been referred were subsequently, they met the standard for prosecution later on. The question I'd also like to ask the NPA for when we get to you, because it applies to we've asked it in the case of the TPCI, and that is even the prosecutors themselves, given the type, because we're talking commercial crimes here, because there is a possibility that even the person who has to make a decision about whether a case is prosecutable or not, in and of themselves also don't know. So you've got a double whammy where both people are at sea about the case they're investigating and making prosecutorial decisions on. So just we need to deal with that when we get to your point. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would like to maybe start with the very first question from Honorable Mente, where she wanted to understand why we have such a number of declined cases. At what stage do we submit the cases? Who check if these cases are ready to go to NPA? Maybe in responding to this question, Chair, I would like to indicate the PGI, that's what we call prosecution guided investigation. So the prosecutors in our matters, Chair, they don't get involved when only the case is finalized, the investigation. They get involved from the beginning of the investigation, and the prosecutors would also, as much as the police do the investigation plan, the prosecutors also contribute to what should be done in that particular investigation. And when both of us, we are now satisfied that the investigation is complete, every aspect that needed to be followed up has been followed up, then the decision comes. So it is not matters that we decide as police to say, no, this one, there's no merit. It is already in the table of the prosecutors. And the prosecutors will then make a decision to say what we have collected does not take us further to court. Hence, those cases are then declined. We are not submitting the case on the completion. We moved away. That was the situation before, where the police would investigate and finalize and then send to the process for decision. But now they get involved from the beginning of the case. At the end of the day, it is the NPA who should make that call to say this matter cannot be taken further to court. Nobody can be charged. So that's how now we have that numbers. I think I've tried to cover all the aspects which the honourable member have asked on that. Now, the second issue was also I think there was a question whether in the recruitment, I think there's a mention of the detectives. I just want to indicate that the DPSI still appoint members, investigators from the detectives. However, the recruitment strategy have a little bit changed to cover what the chair have been talking about and what the honourable member have talked about. There are members who are now appointed directly from outside, externally so, to the DPSI because of the very qualifications that we talked about that are relevant to our cases of investigation. However, as my divisional commissioner indicated and the NDPP indicated, we are not able to keep those people for a longer period because of the other competing agencies that are able to pay more than what the government is paying. But the detectives still move from the detectives to the DPCI. And even on the training that we have now in the commercial crime space, there is a review of the modules. There are professors from certain universities that are also assisting us to upgrade our training in the commercial crime space. The other point that was raised by the honourable member there, he would want to know the statistics of the number of cases per IO and the successful rate and the rate necessarily because of the complexity and the big matters we're dealing with, not to put one investigator per case. That's another what you call process that we are doing. Now, we end up now some of the matters investigating them as teams. But that's where now, again, we got caught in the sense that the prioritization of the cases at times needs a team to prioritize certain matters over certain matters. So as much as we can bring the number of the cases per investigator chair, but it might not. I felt it's important to mention that at times these investigators get to be appointed to certain teams. And because of the shortage of the personnel, these teams move from one priority to the other. Chair wanted to know how are we prioritizing the cases? What are we looking at? There are a number of issues, Chair. One of them may be the cases already enrolled in court. I think in the previous, before lunch, there was an indication that at times there are applications for further particulars from the state, further particulars which were not necessarily covered in the investigation of the case. So as much as those dockets are at court, Chair, but we still have members that are running around trying to cover whatever that is needed in court in that particular matter. So now we end up now having one team, having maybe 3 or 4 priorities, which they have now to move from one priority to the other. That's where this issue of the resources is catching up with us, Chair. But I am sure these figures per investigators, we can provide them, Chair, if we are just given time to prepare that. By the committee, we can present that. But I want to indicate that at times the very same members who have those individual cases form part of different teams. I'm sure we'll be able to explain further on that.
Sorry, can I please interrupt you, if you don't mind? So look, I don't think you've answered either me or Honorable Matiwan satisfactorily. So what I need to know, and I'll tell you what my simple mind is thinking, right? Maybe you prioritize cases where the sums of money involved are too big. I'm thinking maybe that's maybe that's part of your consideration. Or maybe you're considering whether it is high profile or not. Not all corruption gets reported and publicly in a publication, but you might nonetheless have an investigation going which none of us know about. What I'm trying to understand is what considerations go into the prioritization. I understand the need to support the prosecutors because a matter is pending at court and the postponements cannot be indefinite. I get that. But I'm just saying, given your resource constraints, how do you choose which case proceeds at 100 k's per hour, which proceeds at 40 k's per hour? It's a real question. I mean, we just want to understand of the kind of choices you have to make.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, as we are now having the NPCOC, which is the National Priority Crime Operation Committee, this committee moved from, we had ACTT before, and then in that ACTT we had a criteria, Chair, that we were following, which now moved to the ACTT, where we look into a number of issues, the public interest, or the value, as the Chair is saying, and also the impact of those cases to the government and the citizens. There are a number of issues that we are looking at, Chair, and those, at the end of the day, once that case passes that criteria, then it becomes a priority matter. We had a list of priority matters that we were keeping them as a CTD. We have moved them now to the NPCOC, which is also all of the agencies that are here are participating in it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just give my impression? I think it depends on the detective or the investigators which case is moving by way of witness cooperation and availability of information, because you have not answered the question. I think what you are telling me is that there hasn't been a specific macro level guideline on how you prioritize cases at your level. There is now going to be, because that's all I wanted to know. Is it the amount of money? Is it, what is the issue? Advocate Badu?
I'm just going to emphasize what General Makinyane just said, that when the ACTT was in place, there was a very specific initiative to address exactly what you're saying. How do we prioritize? How do we decide which cases will be dealt with in what order? And it's a that document took months to get together, and it deals with a whole lot of criteria, whether it's the value, whether it's the profile of the person concerned, the impact that it could make, and then there's even weightings that are attached to it in terms of the weightings and in order to determine the prioritization. So that is what in fact guides the prioritization. So it's a very clear, detailed document that assists the SAPs in prioritizing investigations then that the other entities get involved in. So I just wanted you to leave you with that, and not to think that there's no very structured approach to it, because it is there. Hopefully it's being applied in that way, but there's definitely a lot of thought that went into this very issue, and there is a guideline to address this very issue.
All right. No, thank you. Honorable Member.
No, thank you, Chair. No, Advocate Badoy is mentioning the work of the ACTT. I thought she was going to continue explaining to us what happened to that ACTT, which used to come and give us monthly reports. But in addition to the question which is being explained, I'm going to make an example now. You said there's about 500 new recruits you are going to look for, 300 internal, 200 external. I'm already seeing a danger, because yes, you're going to do 300 internal, and that internal is going to upgrade all your entry level that are dealing with the collection of data, compiling of documentation, looking for whatever information that's not very serious. And you're going to take 300 people from that space to the top. You're going to leave 300 spaces open, which is going to take another process to fill it up. That talks to the systems that are not in sync. You don't know how to fill, where you're going to be filling that gap from. It's not coming from college. Hence, I was asking, is there a relationship you have with universities or institutions that are producing the skill we are looking for, so that you can quickly fill in that 300 you're going to lose. The 200 that's going external is fine. It's people that are looking for jobs, good thing. We're welcoming it. But the 300 internally is going to create much more chaos for your prioritization, because you're not going to have the person who's collecting information from the ground. And the last one was on what you were responding in terms of the cases how you are prioritizing. I want to give you an example. You have Department of Health that the case is above 1 billion in terms of the amount you are investigating. It's 89 cases. We don't know how much each case has, but cumulatively it's above 1 billion. You have cases in court. It's 50 cases, and then 49 is still under investigation. You know what is happening now? Clinics, hospitals, and everyone, corruption is taking place because these 89 people are not being prosecuted. We have heard about someone being arrested somewhere, briefly appeared, then was gone. Then the others are continuing. By next year, this time when you get here, we may be finding 2 billion in the space of health. But more than that, people are dead because it looks like nothing is happening. So we need to understand your prioritization so that we are able to even say, Chair, in a social cluster where a basic service delivery is affected, we can't leave this space open. It has to be prioritized. I'm just making an example with health. If you don't find a certain machine in a clinic where a tenderpreneur was supposed to have procured an equipment and procured a substandard, now an operation can't take place in a theater because the equipment is not up to standard, that person dies. And then when the case gets to DPCI, it's not prioritized because of whatever. That we don't know. That's exactly what the Chair and Honorable Matuana are asking. How are we getting to a point of saying we look at the importance of the case to make sure we nip every corrupt element in the bud and not open a room for it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It is indeed true that in the 300, there is a possibility that we would promote people who are inside the system. That is correct. There was a question, Chair, that was asked about the universities, the relationship that we have with the university. We do have a relationship with the universities. The team that I spoke of earlier from our forensic accounting goes and do some career expo or similar thing at universities to attract the young interested, the student that might be interested. The honorable member spoke of how do we prioritize. I'm not sure that the ACTT approach that my colleague tried to explain was understood. What happens is that in the NPCOC, which took over from the ACTT, because the ACTT was only focused on corruption. Now the NPCOC has broadened the scope. It now includes organized crime, it includes corruption, it includes serious commercial crime, the NPCOC. In that committee, SIU sits there, the NPA sits there, ourselves, and the SAPS sit there. We then look at the cases, and collectively, we decided we will prioritize the following. It is a monthly process that we report to, and then the criteria is similar to what was at the ACTC, where we were looking at public interest, where we were looking at the amount involved, where we were looking at the complexity of the matter, where we would look at the impact that a specific case, if we were to have a takedown on it, will have. So we then, once we've prioritized it, it then comes to the way that General Makinyane was explaining, that we then form a team that will ensure that at least these specific ones that we have prioritized and we account monthly on are expedited. The last aspect that I thought it is important also to mention is that we do not leave any case behind, but those that we say we are prioritizing, we then put more resources to them. Meaning that you might find that the one case is still investigated by a single investigator. But those that we say in the NPCOC that these are priority, we then put a team on, but all of them, whether they are in the team approach or single investigator, they will still be guided by the prosecutor. I hope you got that. Thank you.
All right.
Chair, maybe to touch, I think there was a question on the matter that was found not guilty, and then there was the honourable member wanted to know what case. It is a case that involves employees of the department, the teachers of education in Limpopo, who then applied to the department for the scholar transport issues. It's just that now the details of why they were found not guilty, having been charged, is that what we are trying to get to those, because it can be either a technicality when there was evidence, but we are trying to get that maybe before the round of questions is finalized, we can have those details to respond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I give Honorable Kubeka, Atkinson, and Maduna a chance?
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the House.
Sorry, it looks like I've missed an answer. Sorry.
No worries, Chair.
I wasn't sure if we had answered Honourable Isak's question, but then to start with, I'm not sure if I fully understood the question. It was about the obscured line of instruction between the NPA and the DPCI. So I was just trying to understand so that I can properly answer you. Chair, through you, of course, sorry.
Yeah, no, look, early on in the presentation, okay, so the impression that I got is that there seems to be somewhat of obscurity, exactly as my question implies. So I wanted you to clarify, are there no obscured lines? Are you comfortable the instructions are open and transparent, or do you sometimes have difficulty in having to communicate these instructions? Simple.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So, General Makinyane has explained the prosecutor-guided investigation model. To be brutally frank, I think we need to properly interrogate whether this model is working the way it should. Because ideally the way it should work is, as the General explained, the prosecutor gets involved in a complex investigation, not all investigations, on very complex ones, at an earlier stage in the investigation. And ideally, that investigation should progress through, and prosecutors and investigators should also be on the same page, because they are meant to be working in a very coordinated way. But in General Lebia's time even, you'd find that the investigators are saying one thing to their line of command, and the prosecutors are saying something else to the prosecution line of command. And I think that is where you have these challenges. And I think, going back to what the chair said, unless maybe the IDAC is the prosecution-led model, is perhaps the model that we should be looking at in terms of very complex cases, because, and we've been, General Lebia, and even at the national level, we've been trying to find ways of ensuring that at the provincial level, where the work actually happens, where the cases, where the prosecutors and investigators are working together, what are the challenges with that model, and to see how we could actually improve that model, or to think about new models of how we do this. So we have incredibly good relationships. So that's no challenges with that. At provincial level, national level, coordination is good, working well. But I still do see a lot of challenges in the prosecutor-guided model, because you will have investigators and prosecutors having different understandings, yet if they are working in the team the way they're meant to be working on a case, all of them, everyone should be on the same page about this. But I think we need to interrogate this more, and to understand what are the strengths of this model, what are the weaknesses, and how do we strengthen the model if we want to get the best outcome. Fully understanding that prosecutors are not investigators. Investigators are investigators, and there should be skills, capacity, expertise in the police to be able to know what it's necessary to have a prosecutable, strong case. It should not be that the prosecutors are, of course we will do that, but ideally that guidance should come from within the police. They should know, in order to prove a complex case like this, you have the experience, expertise. So the prosecutors has a minimal guiding role, not a major guiding role, because that investigation is happening in the SAPs. You've got the skills, expertise. But I think there's a gap there, so that we need to look into. So that's an important question, and I think we as entities need to interrogate this model carefully and understand what are the weaknesses and what are the strengths, and how do we build on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Just allow me to comment. This is exactly why I raised the question. Sometimes I would read a newspaper or an article or an op-ed, and I find it difficult myself to comprehend and understand as to what are these obscured lines. Why is it so? I sometimes think of the ordinary South African out there who wants to try and understand the dynamics of the NPA and the DPCI, and how does the SIU fit in. So this is why I actually raised this, because I needed to get some clarity, and I appreciate the frankness that the advocate has alluded to, that we really maybe need to look at this and come up with some form of simplicity or clarity. But I thank you again. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much. Look, I think there is also a risk that I see where the prosecutor is too involved, in that the investigation might be misdirected, where the prosecutor has preconceived notions of what needs to happen from early on. I think ideally you want a sufficient detachment from the specifics of the investigation for the prosecutor to make the right decision. Otherwise, a prosecutor comes across a potential witness they don't like, because they're just obstinate and crude, and that might affect, it might not happen all the time or happen habitually, but I do think that guidance is okay. Too deep an involvement can be a problem. I think. Honorable Kupeka, sorry.